Well, I told you.
Huh? Told me what?
All we had to do, shoot down the helicopters.
Listen, not for nothing, but do you know the story about the Zen master and the little boy?
Oh, is this something from Nitsa, the Greek witch of Aqualippa, Pennsylvania?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is. There was a little boy, and on his 14th birthday, he gets a horse. And everybody in the village says, how wonderful, the boy got a horse. And the Zen master says, we'll see. 2 years later, the boy falls off the horse, breaks his leg, and everybody in the village says, how terrible. And the Zen master says, we'll see. Then a war breaks out, and all the young men have to go off and fight, except the boy can't because his leg's all messed up. And everybody in the village says, how wonderful.
And the Zen master says, we'll see.
So you get it.
No, because I'm stupid.
You're not stupid. You're just in Congress.
Send them money.
You can start with the roads, move on to the schools, factories.
Gus, now it's a party.
Restock the sheep herds. Give them jobs. Give them hope.
I'm trying.
Yeah, well, try harder.
I'm fine for every dollar.
Yeah.
I took you from 5 million to $1 billion. I broke the ice on the sting in the Milan. I got a Democratic Congress in lockstep behind a Republican president.
Well, that's not good enough, because I'm going to hand you a code word classified NIE right now, and it's going to tell you that the crazies have started rolling into Kandahar like it's a fucking bathtub train.
Jesus, Gus, you could depress a bride on her wedding day.
Hey. Listen to what I'm telling you.
You did a hell of a job for the son of a soda pop maker.
We'll see, said the Zen master.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Mayday Network. You're watching the Daily Dispatch. We're doing special coverage tonight of Mango Mussolini addressing the nation. We have retired Lieutenant Colonel Jaclyn Urso with us tonight to give us her perspective and expertise from her 20 years in the United States Marine Corps, serving as a judge advocate. So, Jaclyn, hello, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Of course. Here's my first question for you. When you heard that the president was addressing the nation this evening, what was your first reaction?
Yeah, it's always a grab bag, right? You never know exactly what he's going to say and how he's potentially going to embarrass the United States on the world stage, and just kind of holding my breath and watching the news, trying to figure out, what exactly is he going to say? Is he going to talk about NATO? Is he going to, start berating our allies in the NATO alliance? Is he going to say he's going to pull out of Iran and then declare victory and move on to Cuba? All these things were kind of running through my head. And then in specifically NATO was running through my head because I've spent a couple of years at 2MEF in Camp Lejeune and deployed multiple times to Europe to work with our NATO allies in support of the Russian problem set. So this is kind of near and dear and personal to me as we watch what's about ready to unfold this evening.
Let's talk about the NATO part of this here for a second. Because, he said he's going to speak about the war tonight. Again, I don't know if you saw this, the president, they're calling him president of Iran, the new leader of Iran, put out a letter today to the American people, full of, it's all bullshit, right? But saying basically, we are not the aggressors here. We're an ancient, we're a long-lived civilization here, and if anyone's the aggressor here, it's the United States and not us. And obviously trying to box Donald Trump into whatever this is ahead of the speech that he announced that he's going to do. And then, but leading up to all of this was Marco Rubio and the ambassador to NATO, Matt Whitaker, going on TV in the last 24 hours and saying, well, the other countries here, they haven't been terribly helpful to us during this conflict. But here's the thing, Jaclyn, like, we weren't attacked.
Right. And first of all, Trump is saying that there's a regime change. There really is no regime change. They have the same president that they did before.
Right.
The only change now is, you replace the older guy that was 85 years old, who was dying of cancer, who was kind of less aggressive, with his now son, who is more aggressive, the one that was kind of the formula behind the killing of the 30,000 people that were protesting in early January. Now his wife has died. I think his child has died. And so now he's digging even more. So this whole purpose of we went in there for regime change is just completely flabbergasting. And then you get into the NATO piece. And if you look back in the history, NATO was formed in 1949, and the whole purpose behind it was a defensive alliance. In the aftermath of World War II, Western Europe laid in ruins with a new threat, which was rapidly emerging, which was the Soviet expansion. So after the USSR had, installed communist governments across the European continent, and then the Berlin blockade, NATO was like, the countries of NATO, there was 12 of them originally, said, we need to get together. And because this is a threat to the European continent, and no single European nation could stand alone against the Soviet military power. So they established on April 4th, 1949, the NATO alliance, and it was a defensive-minded alliance of 12 nations, where Article 5, the collective self-defense, was the main deterrent. A strike on one is a strike on all. So at the foundation of NATO, it was not an offensive alliance. It was traditionally a defensive alliance in response to Soviet expansion. So the only time throughout the history of NATO, it was the Article 5 was triggered was when the United States was hit by the Taliban on September 11th, 2001, right. And then ISAF was created, the International Security Assistance Force, under the NATO umbrella to work in Afghanistan under the military alliance. So, if you look back in history, NATO was a defensive alliance, right? And the only time it was actually triggered was in our self-defense of September 11th.
Right. So we were actually attacked. And whether or not the intelligence, obviously going into Iraq was old, it was incorrect, we were being lied to. At least there was a reason, sort of, a buildup, an argument being made to the American public as to why we needed to go in. Afghanistan obviously, made a lot more sense in the immediate, aftermath of September 11th. And that's actually kind of why I wanted to play that clip going into the show. That is from Charlie Wilson's War, which is a true story about congressman from Texas who helped with a member of the CIA to fund a covert war to arm the people of Afghanistan to fight against the Soviet Union, which, ultimately sort of led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. But we effed up the endgame, which is another clip here we'll play in here a second. There's a really interesting part that I had not ever noticed before in that clip that we played in the beginning, when he hands the intelligence over to Charlie Wilson and he's like, the crazies are coming out. And he says, I need you to listen to what I'm saying here. And there's silence except for a jet flying overhead really quite loudly. And the foreshadow here is that it is those people who were radicalized and attacked us on September 11th.
Exactly. We left a vacuum after the Soviets pulled out. I think in the 80s, we left a political and governmental vacuum, and then who came in was the Taliban.
Right.
And so they had almost 20 years of building up their religious kind of fanatical fanatics about, killing the infidel and the Americans and the West. And if, but for us just pulling out and leaving that vacuum, I think we may have been able to work through the building of an actual government in Afghanistan. But instead, we abandoned them, and the Taliban took over with their radical, Islamic religion, and the rest is history.
Right. And not to mention the attacks, leading up to September 11th abroad, the USS Cole, right, in the Atlantic, which led to the deaths of many of our service members as well. And I want to play the clip from Charlie Wilson's war, so maybe we'll play it after the speech. I've got my eye over here on my laptop. I've got NBC News queued up for us to go to the speech whenever that's going to happen. And as people are like, are we really going to watch this? We are, because here's the thing. As much as we hate him and he's ridiculous and he's probably lying to us, gaslighting us, because I think he's had 5 or 6 different talking points since the beginning of just today, let alone yesterday. We don't know what he's going to say. Not really, especially after that letter was released today from the Iranian regime. And we have to watch. Mary, you're exactly right. We have to be witnesses. We have to bear witness to all of this. I think this is a little bit different than, like a State of the Union or something like that, right? That's just kind of like a required speech, and it's a lot of, hot air moving around about the place. This is sort of specific to something that is very directly affecting us here at home and to everyone around the world, as they have cut off and the Strait of Hormuz, which is, basically, sorry, I'm just watching this, like a main artery to deliver, oil to the rest of the world. And already our gas prices, I asked people this afternoon when we went live, like, oh, here he goes. Here we go. Hold on.
My fellow Americans, good evening. Let me begin by congratulating the team at NASA and our brave astronauts on the successful launch of Artemis II. It was quite something. It will be traveling further than any manned rocket has ever flown and will very substantially pass the moon, go around it, and come back home from a distance that has never been done before. It's amazing. They are on the way, and God bless them. These are brave people. We want to God bless those 4 unbelievable astronauts. As we speak this evening, it's been just 1 month since the United States military began Operation Epic Fury, targeting the world's #1 state sponsor of terror, Iran. In these past 4 weeks, our armed forces have delivered swift, decisive, overwhelming victories on the battlefield. Victories like few people have ever seen before. Tonight, Iran's Navy is gone. Their Air Force is in ruins. Their leaders, most of them terrorist regime they led, are now dead. Their command and control of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is being decimated as we speak. Their ability to launch missiles and drones is dramatically curtailed, and their weapons, factories, and rocket launchers are being blown to pieces. Very few of them left. Never in the history of warfare has an enemy suffered such clear and devastating large-scale losses in a matter of weeks. Our enemies are losing in America, as it has been for 5 years under my presidency, is winning, and now winning bigger than ever before. Before discussing this current situation, I also want to thank our troops for the masterful job they did in taking the country of Venezuela in a matter of minutes. That hit was quick, lethal, violent, and respected by everyone all over the world. After rebuilding our military during my first term, we have by far the strongest military anywhere in the world. And now we're working along with Venezuela and are, in a true sense, joint venture partners. We're getting along incredibly well in the production and sale of massive amounts of oil and gas. the second largest reserves on Earth after the United States of America. We're now totally independent of the Middle East, and yet we are there to help. We don't have to be there. We don't need their oil. We don't need anything they have, but we're there to help our allies. Tonight, I want to provide an update on the tremendous progress our warriors have made in Iran and discuss why Operation Epic Fury is necessary for the safety of America and the security of the free world. From the very first day I announced my campaign for president in 2015, I have vowed that I would never allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. This fanatical regime has been chanting death to America, death to Israel for 47 years. Their proxies were behind the murder of 241 Americans in the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut, the slaughter of hundreds of our service members with roadside bombs. They were involved in the attack on the USS Cole, and they carried out the countless other heinous acts, including the just horrible, bloody atrocities of October 7th in Israel, something that most people have never seen anything like it. This murderous regime also recently killed 45,000 of their own people who were protesting in Iran. 45,000 dead. For these terrorists to have nuclear weapons would be an intolerable threat. The most violent and thuggish regime on earth would be free to carry out their campaigns of terror, coercion, conquest, and mass murder from behind a nuclear shield. I will never let that happen, and neither should any of our past presidents. This situation has been going on for 47 years and should have been handled long before I arrived in office. I did many things during my 2 terms in office to stop the quest for nuclear weapons by Iran first, and perhaps most importantly, I killed General Qasem Soleimani in my first term. He was an evil genius, brilliant person, a horrible human being, however, the father of the roadside bomb, and he lived just horrible what he did. Iran would have been perhaps in far better, stronger position. Had he lived, we would have had probably a different conversation tonight. But you know what? We'd still be winning and winning big. And then very importantly, I terminated Barack Hussein Obama's Iran nuclear deal, a disaster. Obama gave them $1.7 billion in cash, green cash, took it out of banks from Virginia, D.C., and Maryland, all the cash they had. Flew it by airplanes in an attempt to buy their respect and loyalty, but it didn't work. They laughed at our president and went on with their mission to have a nuclear bomb. His Iran deal would have led to a colossal arsenal of massive nuclear weapons for Iran, and they would have had them years ago, and they would have used them. Would have been a different world. There would have been no Middle East and no Israel right now, in my opinion, the opinion of a lot of great experts, had I not terminated that terrible deal. And I was so honored to do it. I was so proud to do it. It was so bad right from the beginning. Essentially, I did what no other president was willing to do. They made mistakes, and I am correcting them. My first preference was always the path of diplomacy, yet the regime continued their relentless quest for nuclear weapons and rejected every attempt at an agreement. For this reason, in June, I ordered a strike on Iran's key nuclear facilities, an Operation Midnight Hammer. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Those beautiful B-2 bombers performed magnificently. We totally obliterated those nuclear sites. The regime then sought to rebuild their nuclear program at a totally different location, making clear they had no intention of abandoning their pursuit of nuclear weapons. They were also rapidly building a vast stockpile of conventional ballistic missiles and would soon have had missiles that could reach the American homeland, Europe, and virtually any other place on Earth. Iran's strategy was so obvious. They wanted to produce as many as possible, and they did. with the longest range possible, and they had some weapons that nobody believed they had. We just learned that out. We took them out. We took them all out so that no one would really dare stop them. And their race for a nuclear bomb, a nuclear weapon like nobody's ever seen before. They were right at the doorstep. For years, everyone has said that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, but in the end, those are just words if you're not willing to take action when the time comes. As I stated in my announcement of Operation Epic Fury, our objectives are very simple and clear. We are systematically dismantling the regime's ability to threaten America or project power outside of their borders. That means eliminating Iran's Navy, which is now absolutely destroyed, hurting their Air Force and their missile program at levels never seen before, and annihilating their defense industrial base. We've done all of it. Their Navy is gone. Their Air Force is gone. Their missiles are just about used up or beaten. Taken together, these actions will cripple Iran military, crush their ability to support terrorist proxies, and deny them the ability to build a nuclear bomb. Our armed forces have been extraordinary. There's never been anything like it militarily. Everyone is talking about it, and tonight I'm pleased to say that these core strategic objectives are nearing completion. As we celebrate this progress, we think especially of the 13 American warriors who have laid down their lives in this fight to prevent our children from ever having to face a nuclear Iran. Twice this past month, I have traveled to Dover Air Force Base, and it's been something. I wanted to be with those heroes as they return to American soil, and I was with them and their families, their parents, their wives, their husbands. We salute them, and now we must honor them by completing the mission for which they gave their lives. And every single one of the people, their loved ones said, please, sir, please finish the job, every one of them. And we are going to finish the job, and we're going to finish it very fast. We're getting very close. I want to thank our allies in the Middle East, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain. They've been great, and we will not let them get hurt or fail in any way, shape, or form. Many Americans have been concerned to see the recent rise in gasoline prices here at home. This short-term increase has been entirely the result of the Iranian regime launching deranged terror attacks against commercial oil tankers in neighboring countries that have nothing to do with the conflict. This is yet more proof that Iran can never be trusted with nuclear weapons. They will use them, and they will use them quickly. It would lead to decades of extortion, economic pain, and instability worse than we can ever imagine. The United States has never been better prepared economically to confront this threat. You all know that. We built the strongest economy in history. We're going through it right now, the strongest in history. In 1 year, we've taken a dead and crippled country. I hate to say that, but we were a dead and crippled country after the last administration and made it the hottest country anywhere in the world by far, with no inflation, record-setting investments coming into the United States, over $18 trillion, and the highest stock market ever, with 53 all-time record highs in just 1 year. It all positioned us to get rid of a cancer that has long simmered. It's known as the nuclear Iran, and they didn't know what was coming. They've never imagined it. Remember, because of our Drill Baby Drill program, America has plenty of gas. We have so much gas. Under my leadership, we are #1 producer of oil and gas on the planet, without even discussing the millions of barrels that we're getting from Venezuela. Because of the Trump administration's policies, we produce more oil and gas than Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. Think of that, Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. And that number will soon be substantially higher than that. There's no country like us anywhere in the world, and we're in great shape for the future. The United States imports almost no oil through the Hormuz Strait. and won't be taking any in the future. We don't need it. We haven't needed it, and we don't need it. We've beaten and completely decimated Iran. They are decimated, both militarily and economically and in every other way. And the countries of the world that do receive oil through the Hormuz Strait must take care of that passage. They must cherish it. They must grab it and cherish it. They can do it easily. We will be helpful, but they should take the lead in protecting the oil that they so desperately depend on. So to those countries that can't get fuel, many of which refuse to get involved in the decapitation of Iran, we had to do it ourselves. I have a suggestion. Number one, buy oil from the United States of America. We have plenty. We have so much. And number two, build up some delayed courage. Should have done it before. Should have done it with us, as we asked. Go to the Strait and just take it, protect it, use it for yourselves. Iran has been essentially decimated. The hard part is done, so it should be easy. And in any event, when this conflict is over, the Strait will open up naturally. It'll just open up naturally. They're going to want to be able to sell oil because that's all they have to try and rebuild. It will resume the flowing, and the gas prices will rapidly come back down. Stock prices will rapidly go back up. They haven't come down very much, frankly. They came down a little bit, but they've had some very good days over the last couple of days. We've done actually much better than I thought, but we had to take that little journey to Iran to get rid of this horrible threat. With our historic tax cuts, where people are just now talking about receiving larger refunds than they ever thought possible, they are getting so much more money than they thought. That's from the great, big, beautiful bill. Our economy is strong and improving by the day, and it will soon be roaring back like never before. It will top the levels that it was a month ago. I've made clear from the beginning of Operation Epic Fury that we will continue until our objectives are fully achieved. Thanks to the progress we've made, I can say tonight that we are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong. In the meantime, discussions are ongoing. Regime change was not our goal. We never said regime change, but regime change has occurred because of all of their original leaders' death. They're all dead. The new group is less radical and much more reasonable. Yet if during this period of time no deal is made, we have our eyes on key targets. If there is no deal, we are going to hit each and every one of their electric generating plants very hard and probably simultaneously. We have not hit their oil, even though that's the easiest target of all, because it would not give them even a small chance of survival or rebuilding. But we could hit it, and it would be gone, and there's not a thing they could do about it. They have no anti-aircraft equipment. Their radar is 100% annihilated. We are unstoppable as a military force. The nuclear sites that we obliterated with the B-2 bombers have been hit so hard that it would take months to get near the nuclear dust, and we have it under intense satellite surveillance and control. If we see them make a move, even a move for it, we'll hit them with missiles very hard again. We have all the cards, they have none. It's very important that we keep this conflict in perspective. American involvement in World War I lasted 1 year, 7 months, and 5 days. World War II lasted for 3 years, 8 months, and 25 days. The Korean War lasted for 3 years, 1 month, and 2 days. The Vietnam War lasted for 19 years, 5 months, and 29 days. Iraq went on for 8 years, 8 months, and 28 days. We are in this military operation, so powerful, so brilliant, against one of the most powerful countries for 32 days. And the country has been eviscerated and essentially is really no longer a threat. They were the bully of the Middle East, but they're the bully no longer. This is a true investment in your children and your grandchildren's future. The whole world is watching, and they can't leave the power, strength, and brilliance. They just can't believe what they're seeing. They leave it to your imagination, but they can't believe what they're seeing. The brilliance of the United States military. Tonight, every American can look forward to a day when we are finally free from the wickedness of Iranian aggression and the specter of nuclear blackmail. Because of the actions we have taken, we are on the cusp of ending Iran's sinister threat to America and the world. And I'll tell you, the world is watching. And when we do, when it's all over, the United States will be safer, stronger, more prosperous, and greater than it has ever been before. May God bless the men and women of the United States Armed Forces, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much, and good night.
You have been listening there to President Trump delivering that presidential address to the nation about the war against Iran. And you heard the president there lay.
Jaclyn?
So many things. I was taking notes throughout the entire
Good.
Of his speech, but just starting out, victory in the battlefield, Iran military decimated, curtailed ability to strike, clear devastating losses. Like, I just don't really know what's going on, because I feel like this state-run media is suppressing the actual news of how many casualties do we have? How many deaths do we really have? Is it just 13? I mean, every life is a special life that needs to be cherished. But I'm hearing news from other sources in Europe and in other places that the casualties are a lot higher than what this American government is leading them on to be. And I watched videos of the American service members being hit by missile strikes from Iran. I just don't really believe anything that our president is saying to us right now, which is really scary, and it's really sad that we're supposed to live in a democracy with the news, news as the fourth pillar of democracy, and yet he is running the news networks, and I don't know what's happening. And I have friends and Marines and sailors that are part of those ARGBUs, right? Amphibious Ready Group Marine Expeditionary Units, the 11th and the 31st, the 11th from Camp Pendleton, the 31st from Okinawa. And they're supposed to be used as deterrents to China and North Korea, right? We're working on the pivot to the Pacific, but instead they are diverted to the Persian Gulf. And our weapon systems that were supposed to be there in the Pacific to deter China and Russia are now being sent to the Persian Gulf. So what exactly is happening in this war right now? I just really don't know. And it's really frustrating, because this is something that should have been avoided. Full transparency needs to be enacted here so that the American people know what's going on.
Yeah, because we don't. And to your point, we can't trust anything that's coming out of this administration. We cannot trust any information that's coming out of this Pentagon. We, again, do not have a press pool at the Pentagon reporting on the Defense Department in any sort of meaningful way. And we have Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of Defense, at the podium in front of the cameras with his little hairdo and his pocket square every day, reciting soliloquies and monologues that he, I think, literally just put into ChatGPT. Give me the most hyperbolic language possible to deliver to the American people today. But Donald Trump's speech, first of all, do you think that was recorded, or do you think that was live?
I think it was definitely written out, and he stuck to those talking points.
Yeah, except for the ad-libbing, where he goes, "Some of like that we've never seen before. things that have never happened. But how many times did he say that?
Right.
Several.
That's like his filler. When he has nothing.
Filler. Saying the things that have never happened before. That's never happened before like that. It's bigger than ever. This is what he does.
And then he talks about one big, where we've taken, Venezuela in minutes. Is a joint venture partnership with Venezuela and the oil and independence of the Middle East. And we're here to help our allies, and we don't need Middle Eastern oil. Well, the issue is that we don't have the infrastructure to process the oil.
Right.
We may have lots of oil that we're producing, but we don't. It boils down to, the economics, like the infrastructure. The United States doesn't have the infrastructure to process the oil. So, we export because other countries pay us more. But, for him to say that we're not reliant on, on oil is just, it's half of the conversation. He's not telling you the whole thing, because about 60% of the crude oil that runs through the U.S. refineries is extracted right here from home. However, our refineries run on many different types of crude oil, some of which don't produce here and can't economically transport. In those cases, we use imports. So he's not giving you the full picture on this whole oil thing going on, and saying that we don't need their oil. We don't need to rely on their oil. That's not the point.
Right.
And then, pawning it off onto our allies in Europe and saying, well, it's your responsibility because you are the ones that use the oil. Again, we just generated a problem that wasn't a problem.
Right.
Before.
Right.
Right?
It's like we started the fire and then we're putting it out and really want to be thanked by everyone. Like, look what we did. We're fixing a problem that we caused.
Right.
None of this needed to happen. None of this needed to happen. And again, like I know we talked about this in the very beginning when this all began. This is tricky, right? It's like it was in Venezuela. We're dealing with authoritarian dictators, murderous regimes. The Iranian regime killed tens of thousands of their own people just a matter of a couple weeks ago for protesting against the regime. They turned off the internet so that no one could get a message out, and they carried out mass murder. For Donald Trump to even pretend that that is why we're there, or part of the reason why we're there, is complete horseshit. Because at the same time, he was on Truth Social telling people, Iranians, stay in the street, continue to make your voices heard. Meanwhile, our own protesters protesting against his government were being shot in the streets in broad daylight, murdered Americans.
The arguments that they're posing, Marco Rubio and Hegseth and the rest of the administration, about, well, we would have a different Iran if they used their money to support their people and invest in their people. And it's like, you're basically saying the argument for yourself of what's going on in America. Like, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Right now, you're spending billions of dollars on a war of choice when the American people are suffering because the prices are so high. The oil's high, the healthcare is high, groceries are high.
Everything.
Everything.
Right. We have a housing crisis.
Kicked off of food stamps, people getting kicked off of Medicare and Medicaid. Why? To give tax breaks to the billionaires so that we can now fund this war. It's like, what, $1 billion a day for the war.
Yeah. And they said this, and they're proposing legislation to cut healthcare further to pay for this. They always seem to find money to pay for these wars, but never can seem to find the enough money to keep Americans healthy, to keep roofs over our head. I understand that we live in free market capitalism. This is a very capitalist country. However, I always thought that at some point we might progress to a point in this country where we join the rest of the developed world in at least providing some sort of socialized healthcare for the American people to keep us healthy. And a healthy republic is competitive with the rest of the world. If we're sick and poor, we can't compete with China. We can't compete with the rest of the world at all.
And Jerome Powell is saying that this 39 billion that we're in debt right now is not sustainable. You know,
Right.
at some point, we're not going to be able to take out any more debt. I mean, if you look back at the history of empires, it all stems from the destruction of their empires, stems from the debt that they've acquired. You know, the Romans, the Greeks. So, you know, this is not sustainable. And I believe in capitalism too, but there needs to be some guardrails around capitalism.
Right. Responsible.
Better capitalism with no guardrails. This is exactly what you get. You get the oligarchs at the top, you know, getting all of the money, because trickle-down economics doesn't work. And it was the biggest scam ever that was introduced in the 80s with Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, what a joke. What a joke.
We were at our best, or not at our best, I would say we were very prosperous after World War II because of those social programs that were instituted by FDR.
Exactly. Which were radical at the time, right? And it's like the Republican Party has been spending the last 80 years trying to undo them. And meanwhile, also threatening to take away people's hard-earned money via Social Security, which again is money that people have already paid. That is our money. That is your money. That is all of our money. And they want to take it away from you, again, to give to the billionaire class. And like, this is where, again, like the history lessons kind of come into play, right? What happened during the collapse of the Soviet Union, right? There was a bunch of oligarchs that kind of swept in, was given, all kinds of power and access to certain industries as the Soviet Union broke up. And those people became the most powerful people on the continent, essentially. They became the Russian oligarchs that are controlling everything now. And that is what happened. They sold the Soviet Union off for parts. And it certainly feels as though that's sort of the scenario that we're in right now. And I think the other part of this that's so infuriating, aside from the fact that he brought up Vietnam, he was like listing off, and also some of these timelines didn't seem accurate to me, but maybe I'm wrong. But for him to even bring up Vietnam, how dare you? This 5-time draft dodger to even bring up Vietnam in a speech, while thousands of working class young boys and men went off to go fight in this war and die in this war, so that silver spoon up his ass Queen's Donald Trump could get a deferment from his doctor for bone spurs, which we all know is bullshit, so that all these working class boys could go in his place and die in his place.
And what was the result of it, right? Congress then does a self-reflection and recognizes that they allowed the presidents, the executive branch, to fulfill all of the responsibilities about, waging wars, that they then implemented the War Powers Resolution Act. So a direct result of a runaway executive, with no checks and balances on the use of military force, resulted in the War Powers Resolution Act. And now here we are 50 years later, and we're trying to implement the War Powers Resolution Act again. And what are the Republicans doing? They're not voting for it. They're again allowing a rogue executive to take away. They basically abrogated their constitutional responsibilities of checks and balances and the authority to declare war, and given it over to the executive branch. And we're in the same spot that we were in during the Vietnam era. And it's just frightening to see that history is repeating itself. Like, we haven't learned our lessons.
Yeah. And once again, it is the working class people of this country who have to go and pay the ultimate price. And we didn't get a chance to talk about this, and I think it's somewhat related that they just raised the enlistment age for the Army to 42.
Right.
What do you think that that's signaling?
Right. The last time they increased the age was during the Iraq and Afghan wars, where we had the surge and we needed more troops. So what is that forecasting right now?
Right.
And then he talks about the safety and security of us in the free world, and they're never going to have a nuclear weapon. And they've been, saying death to America and to Israel for 47 years. We've
Right.
been
If they've been 2 weeks away from
years.
if they've been 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon for the last 47 years, all this, like, it can't be both things, right? They can't be on the verge of acquiring a nuclear weapon and also have been almost acquiring one for 47 years. Like, which is it?
And then we decimated their nuclear weapons capabilities back.
Right. We obliterated it. But by the way, we didn't. And that's why we need to go in and bomb a young little girls' school and kill almost 200 little girls.
Right. Because we were relying on old intelligence and we didn't have a conventional LOAC analysis with attorneys and military commanders reviewing the information to go through a LOAC analysis in a reasonable manner. And I'm not saying that the regime was all roses and
right, of course.
I mean, they're bad dudes,
very bad,
and they took over in 1979. They were responsible for the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut, where 200 Marines were killed. They were providing information, intelligence, and IEDs to the insurgents and the terrorists in Iraq and Afghanistan that were, killing, Marines and my friends that were over there. They bombed the USS Cole. They've killed 30,000 people of their own. But this is not a regime change like we talked about before.
Right.
You got a younger guy that's the son that's more fanatical and radical than the father, and the father died at 85, and now he's a martyr.
Right.
So he's saying that he killed Soleimani in the first term, and they would be worse. It's not as plain, and he's just lying to the American people.
Yeah, I mean, he's full of shit. I mean, just lying and also, I mean, what an insult. What an insult to the intellect of the American people, or at least the people who were alive during, the hostage crisis and everything else, right? Because, I quoted you earlier today when I went live, as I said, Jaclyn says we really suck at regime change. It's not something we do well at all, because we did regime change in Iran already. How did that go? That led us here. Iraq, I mean, the list goes on. This is not something we should be doing because, again, we F up the end game. This is where I want to play this scene. Now, obviously, this is dramatized. This is from a movie. This is from Charlie Wilson's War. This is the next scene after the balcony where they talk about how the crazies are going to come in and, we need to continue investing in Afghanistan in order to set these people up.
Charlie,
Listen,
it's like the congressman from Kabul.
did you hear me say it was $1 million, not $1 billion, for school construction?
We heard you. Everybody heard you, buddy. They heard you at Dover, Delaware.
Well, I sure hope I'm not annoying you, Bob, because that's the last thing I want to do.
Look.
I was in the Roosevelt room with the president last week. You know what he said? He said Afghanistan. Is that still going on?
Well, it is. Half the population of that country is under the age of 14. Half the population is under the age of 14. Now, think how fucking dangerous that is. They're going to come home and find their families are dead. Their villages have been napalmed.
And we helped kill the guys who did it.
Yeah, but they don't know that, Bob, because they don't get home delivery of the New York Times. But even if they did, it was covert, remember? This is what we always do. We always go in with our ideals and we change the world. And then we leave. We always leave. But that ball, though, it keeps on bouncing.
What?
The ball keeps on bouncing.
We're a little busy right now reorganizing Eastern Europe, don't you think?
We've spent billions. Let's spend $1 million on HR 118 and rebuild the school.
Charlie, nobody gives a shit about a school in Pakistan.
Afghanistan.
I mean, in a nutshell. In a nutshell. And shout out to Spencer Garrett, by the way, who's one of the actors in that scene. He's great, and he's that guy who's in everything. And he's my little Instagram friend, and also Dana Bash's paramour. We love Spencer Garrett. But you know, that scene and that, you know, that's it in a nutshell. That's
That
how
encapsulates our,
everything foreign policy.
We reap the problems that we sowed because we didn't fulfill the promises that we originally set forth to accomplish. It was all, blowing things up, and military. Our military is the most sophisticated military in the world. We know that we can obliterate anyone. The problem is that the regime change after is where we get into the quagmire. And again, there's no political end state to any of these wars. And so then you've got the lower socioeconomic class, the less privileged, fighting the wars on behalf of the rich, who are just making money hand over fist. And there's no political end state. And war is an extension of politics, as Clausewitz says. Go in there thinking that you're just going to go and kill bad guys and break things without understanding the ramifications and the deliberate nature of trying to rebuild a society. I mean, we did it with World War II with the Marshall Plan.
Yeah.
Right. We did it with Japan as well after World War II. It's a holistic approach to fixing the problem and investing in money and resources to teach and medical and infrastructure and all these things.
Yeah.
We can't just leave a vacuum. And we've done it over and over and over again.
Every time, and it comes back to bite us.
It comes back to bite us in the butt.
Exactly. And that's why, I mean, again, having realized that piece of the first clip we played at the beginning of the show of that plane flying overhead, I had just never caught it before. And I've seen this movie a million times. And here we are sitting in this very precarious moment in the United States where we all feel like sitting ducks. And, they keep putting out warnings about, safety and warning, oh, we're under threat or whatever else. And there's some people, talking about USAID in the chat as well. Yes, they have dismantled USAID, which has resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people around the world. But also when these wars and these attacks happen, there's usually USAID on the ground helping people. And that is no longer in place.
Right. But USAID is a big, big part of American soft power that we projected throughout the world after World War II. And I personally worked with USAID when I did the humanitarian assistance disaster relief in the Philippines, right? And we had military members go over there, Marines, go over there early before the hurricane hit, the typhoon hit, work with USAID and the Filipino government, right, to assess what it looks like before. And then USAID was the lead agency in the rebuild of the Philippines after. They would be the ones that vet the requests. And if we didn't have USAID on the ground in that civil military engagement, we wouldn't know where to put our resources. And you have to rebuild what was there. You can't just start building anew. And now we don't have USAID and the other civil military functions that assist us in engagement with the population so that we can use our soft power appropriately. Now it's just got a big wounding sword that we use, that we just drop bombs on people. That's not.
And then brag about it, by the way. Brag about it in this really kind of sick, like war porn kind of way. The way that like they, again, Pete Hegseth sort of using this flowery hyperbolic language, talking about how we're like bombing the shit out of people and like, oh, and like we're our might and we're dropping bombs, and Donald Trump writing on Truth Social this morning that we're going to send them back to the Stone Ages. I have this, it's right here. This was this morning at 8:44 a.m. Eastern. Iran's new regime president, much less radicalized and far more intelligent than his predecessors, has just asked the United States of America for a ceasefire. We will consider when Hormuz Strait is open, free, and clear. Until then, we are blasting Iran into oblivion, or as they say, back to the Stone Ages. President DJT. Now, he did use the Stone Ages words sort of like in passing he always sounds like an 8th grader sort of reading before the class. You know what I mean? Just kind of like plowing through every sentence without, comprehending anything that it is that he's saying, and not really caring either. And, I want to ask you, Jaclyn, too. It's a scary thing to ask, but it certainly feels like they're trying to build some sort of case or momentum here, for as much as they're like, oh, this is going to be over in 2 weeks. And we all know that's bullshit. Like, this is not ending in 2 weeks. What are the chances here that they're going to try to use nuclear weapons?
Wow.
Like, that is something I'm really freaked out about.
I think the UN is preparing for that, right?
Yeah.
There's a chance that
there was a whistleblower or somebody who resigned from the UN because of that, and saying that they were trying to do it under the radar without telling people.
Right. And the use of military force needs to be the last resort. Everything else needs to have taken its course in the processes of diplomatic relations and negotiations at the highest level, and needs to be done before the use of military force. And General Mattis said when he was Secretary of Defense, our job as the military is to be prepared, right? To be the best trained, fully equipped military. Why? Not to necessarily use that military power, but to allow our diplomats to negotiate from a position of strength, so that we don't have to use the military resort.
Right.
The United States military needs a commander-in-chief that understands the ramifications of the use of military force and puts in the deliberate, calculated nature of negotiations and understanding the second and third and fourth order effects of using the military. You can't just willy-nilly just use the military to go into Venezuela and just kidnap, the guy in charge, Maduro. I mean, he's a bad guy. And then
right. This is where they
violate the UN Charter, just violate our Constitution. And just because we have the most mightful military, we need to understand that we need to use it in the most pensive manner. And right now we have a commander-in-chief that just wants to flex his muscles and is not giving due respect to the use of military force and the respect to the rule of law. And who's going to lose is that the American people are going to lose. And the American service member is the one that's been placed on the hook, that's going to be the one that's giving up their life for somebody who wants to just willy-nilly flex their muscles because he's got a syndrome where he needs to tell everybody how great he is.
Syndrome. Right. And it's to quote Mary Trump, the title of her book, was it Too Much and Never Enough? Which is, what Donald Trump is. He's too much and it's never enough. And again, and this is like the showboat of him, the showbiz, like wannabe showbiz nature of his personality as well, wanting to make great TV. And that's the other sick part of this. Sick. Because at what point is it enough? And again, this is where even I have to catch myself, and shake myself into reality sometimes, that we're not dealing with a normal person. We are dealing with a sick person who is a sociopath and a psychopath who holds no value for human life at all. And that's not hyperbole. He doesn't. He has no problem sending people to their deaths because he sees himself as the light at the end of that tunnel, because it's at the end of the day, it's going to serve him. It's going to make him better. It's going to make him look stronger. And so, some suckers and losers need to die. They signed up for it. There was an American journalist who was kidnapped last night in Iraq. And the State Department put out a statement basically saying, yes, we're aware that this happened, but we told her not to go there and she went anyways. because this is what they do. You know, you signed up for the military. You signed up for the military. You know, you knew that you might die. So, you know, so sorry.
But to not have the respect and dignity for human life, I raise my right hand, right, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I would hope, and the American service member deserves, a commander-in-chief that puts in the deliberate thought process on how to use the military might in a way that the processes of democracy and the rule of law are fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Lindsey Graham said, oh, we took Iwo Jima. It's like, we can take Kharg Island. Like, you're just taking advantage of the U.S.'s service member, right, willingness to give up their life in defense of this country for freedom and democracy without the due process of the law, without the deliberate, calculated thought process.
Right.
I don't want to waste my life for somebody to flex their muscles just because they want to show everybody how big they are.
Right.
There needs to be a purpose behind the sacrifices made by the American service member.
Right.
They deserve that respect.
Right. But with this administration and this president, it's not about that. And it never will be, and it never has been. This is about Donald Trump and how everybody does not serve the country. He sees everybody, the military, the members of his administration, every staffer, as an extension of himself. Everyone is there to serve him, not America, not NATO, not our European allies, him. And if that means, you know, giving intelligence to the Russians to help Donald Trump, so be it. Because here's something, actually, Tim Snyder, historian Tim Snyder, actually posted this. Let me see where I had it. I meant to load it in, and I think that this is actually a very good point that he made. And let me find this while I continue to delay here. Let's see. He made a point about Russia, and I thought that it was on the nose. On the nose. Where is it? Did I put it? Hold on. I'm going to find this, Jaclyn. I'm going to find this. I have to go through all these pictures of Kristi Noem's husband I have on my desktop.
While you're through, I think it deserves the point. The point needs to be discussed about these sanctions as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Russia and Iran are now making money hand over fist on this oil issue that the United States created. And now there's basically a toll booth in the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran is charging $2 million per ship to go through, sourcing their economy, sourcing their military. And Russia also has the sanctions lift, and so they're diverting, you know, their energy resources and spending and using that, you know, to make money with India and other countries.
Yep.
So the actions that this administration are taking are counterintuitive to the interests of the United States of America and the actions that we're taking militarily in the Middle East. So it's like he's trying to pull the wool over our eyes, saying that he is doing this on behalf of the American people and freedom and democracy and safety. But then at the same time, on the other side of the coin, he's allowing our enemies to fund their military and political operations and intelligence operations to then turn around and kill the United States military that are in the area.
Collateral damage, sacrificial lambs for Donald Trump's pocketbook and I don't know, power. So this was yesterday, March 31st at 12:11 p.m. Donald Trump wrote, all of those countries that can't get jet fuel because of the Strait of Hormuz, like the United Kingdom, which refused to get involved in the decapitation of Iran, I have a suggestion for you. Number one, buy from the U.S. We have plenty. And number two, build up some delayed courage, go to the Strait and just take it. This is rape language, by the way. You'll have to start learning how to fight for yourself. The USA won't be there to help you anymore, just like you weren't there for us. Iran has been essentially decimated. The hard part is done. Go get your own oil, President DJT. So Phillips O'Brien, writes, worth noting that Donald Trump just announced the end of NATO and the special relationship in one tweet. But Timothy Snyder, historian Timothy Snyder, who just recently left the United States to go teach at the University of Toronto, said the whole Iran war is looking more and more like a gimmick to drop energy sanctions on Russia and pressure Europeans to do the same. A war to make Russia's much larger war easier and possible to sustain. Because the second that the Russian government, and this is me, if you're listening and not watching, this is me talking now, not Timothy Snyder, the opportunity for Russia to be able to sell their oil to the United States and to Europe and to the rest of the world is going to fund their war against Ukraine and the genocide that they are committing against the Ukrainian people, while the United States pulls out all of our resources and support for the Ukrainians. After, again, we had an agreement with them that they were going to give up their nuclear power and we would agree to protect them. And that was the agreement until Donald Trump.
Right. And it's the short-sightedness of the Trump administration and his supporters that they don't understand that the fight in Ukraine for freedom and democracy is an extension of our fight for freedom and democracy and European fight for freedom and democracy throughout the world. That is the front line.
Yeah, that's ground zero.
If we don't support them, the NATO alliance could be crumbling because he's going to have Vladimir Putin's going to have the audacity now and the military might and financial strength to then challenge NATO on our eastern flank of the Baltics.
Yep.
That's what's next. And they live right next door. They were under the Iron Curtain until the early 90s. There's people there that still remember my age. They still remember what it was like to live under the Russian occupation.
Yeah. I remember, do you remember Lillehammer Olympics? Oksana Bayul, 16-year-old Oksana Bayul won the gold medal. And there was a huge delay between the end of the competition to the medal ceremony because they could not find the Ukrainian national anthem. That was in 1994. I have a vivid memory of that. And so here is this whole generation of people who, had lived under the Soviet Union, under the Iron Curtain. And these people are alive and well and walking around and this wasn't so long ago at all. And here's the other, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that Heidi, one of our friends, who's a friend of Mayday, she lives in Canada, asked, do we think that the United States military would stop, if Donald Trump were to pull the trigger on a nuclear weapon because he's lost his mind, would they stop? And I don't know the answer to that. However, just to pull this into the Americans that we're doing a rewatch podcast, the episode that's going to drop tomorrow evening is really about all the people really that have stepped in throughout, the Cold War. Cooler heads prevailed, to try to stop things from escalating. And this was after, the Reagan assassination attempt, when they thought it was Russia and whatever. Obviously, this is a fictional, these are fictional people. However, there are examples of this throughout history of people.
Based on real world events.
Right. Based on real world events of people stepping in, during these moments and saying, let's put our foot on the gas here. I'm not going to share that information because I think we need to wait or cooler heads will prevail. And so I don't know. I don't know if there's any people left.
Right.
Exactly.
And I look at Ukraine as kind of a new domino theory effect. Right? And so I'm worried about that. But then that gets to the next question that you bring up. 1-star and 2-star generals are not interviewed or brought in front of the Senate and questioned before they take on their 1 and 2 stars. It's only 3 stars, 4 stars, because that is the top of the military and that civil military function, right? And so we've had military officers that were up for 3 and 4 stars being directly asked by Congress, by senators, if given an unlawful order or illegal order, are you going to follow that? And they're saying, no, I wouldn't. I won't do it. I won't follow that order.
Right.
But at the same time, there's other interviews where 2-star, 3-star, and 4-star generals are brought in, and the senator is asking a direct question, and that senior officer, that general officer, is not giving a straight answer. It happened a couple days ago, and I wish I could remember the specific circumstances.
Yeah.
But I was shocked that I think it was a 3 or 4-star general was brought in and basically cross-examined by a Democratic senator and refused to provide an answer that was clear on what happened in the decision-making process. So they're saying, all the right things to get confirmed as 3-star and 4 stars, but are they going to actually put their money where their mouth is and do the right thing if challenged? And we've already talked about this multiple times, that there's already been a self-selection process where those that knew, unlawful orders may be coming down were resigning or retiring.
Right. Or because I don't want to be here. I don't want to be put in a position where I have to make a choice that is either going to end my military career or put me in jail eventually. I mean, or betray my country in the process. And this is all happening too in the background. And Jaclyn, lots about the promotion situation, what happens in the United States military when you're getting promoted, what you have to go through, the approval process, all that stuff. And there are people, there were Black women who were up for promotion that Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth struck down because, quote unquote, and this is in print reported in the New York Times, that Donald Trump would not want to be seen standing next to Black women.
It's a shame, because those individuals, I think it was also 2 Black men and 2 girls, right? They have been in the military for 25, 30 years and sacrificed a lot and have learned the hard lessons through experience. They are the ones that were in Iraq and Afghanistan, in the early times. So they were brought up in this military at a time where their experience, their temperament, their courage, their intelligence was all tested on the battlefield from the early 2000s. And so those are the people that we want to now be in charge, right? Because they have that experience. They have shown and proven themselves, morally, ethically, legally, physically, militarily, intelligence, that they are the best of the best and the cream of the crop. So those are the exact people that you want to be in charge, especially minorities, because they have an understanding of life from a different perspective. And it's so imperative to have diversity, equity, and inclusion at the highest ranks, because those are the ones that makes the policy decisions that affect the rest of the force. And also are part of the policy discussions with that civil leadership that shapes American foreign policy and American military policy. And if you have the same people, white Anglo-Saxon male Protestant men that are all infantry sitting around the table,
who continue to choose themselves, right? And everybody who looks like them, right?
You're not going to have the diversity and the understanding, the discussions, and the critical thinking necessary from different perspectives to solve the hardest problems that our nation is facing.
Mhm.
They're going to be pigeonholed and tunnel vision because they
Right.
only come from one experience. And again, who is going to suffer? But the American people are going to suffer. The American service
Absolutely.
members are going to suffer.
Absolutely. And again, like this is why Pete Hegseth is so threatened by these people. You know, somebody who is a captain, excuse me, in the Air Force, somebody like Mark Kelly, because if meritocracy, you know, really was in existence, Pete Hegseth wouldn't be there.
You talk about DEI, it's Pete Hegseth and the rest of the administrative staff for Trump that are the ones that are giving a head start on succeeding because they're white and they're men. Diversity, equity, inclusion is to kind of level the playing field and give everybody an equal opportunity to compete for these jobs. It's
Yep.
not saying, well, you deserve this job because you're black or because you're female. It's saying, I'm going to interview you and fully consider you because you are a minority and you bring different experiences to the table that a white Anglo-Saxon male Protestant doesn't have. And that is the critical thinking and perspective that we need to solve the world's hardest problems. So DEI is not automatically giving somebody of a minority or female or LGBTQ, person the job. It's fully experimenting and experiencing and understanding their perspective and recognizing that they can qualify for those highest jobs based on their own personal efforts and credibility.
Absolutely. And you know, to wrap this up, because I am hacking up along over here, keep having to put myself on mute. I don't think that we got any answers from this speech tonight, right? I mean, it certainly didn't seem like it. It seemed like they were just kind of talking in circles and in sort of hypotheticals and maybes. And, you know, I don't think that we're any closer to knowing what's going on. I mean, do you agree, disagree?
I'm looking through my notes again, and it's a lot of bluster, drill baby drill. We have so much gas, number one oil producer.
Yeah,
He's
buzzwords.
Story,
Right.
of that we don't have the capabilities of the refineries. And he was again throwing Barack Obama under the bus with the JCPOA and saying that we gave Iran millions of dollars, and if it wasn't for me, they wouldn't have a nuclear weapon. And if you go back and you actually do the research about the JCPOA, that money was something that was paid to the West on Iran's behalf back in the 79, 80 timeframe, and they were never given the weapons that they had purchased. So we basically stole the $400 million in 1979 that Iran paid, right, for military equipment that was never delivered. And then the interest of 1.3 billion is that 40 years or 45 years that we're at right now that they've paid into something and they never got. It was a quid pro quo. And so we were trying to make them whole in order to come up with a diplomatic solution. And the JCPOA was the right answer.
Right.
And they were following through. Iran was following through with those requirements. And the destruction of the JCPOA, is now leading us to this, pivotal moment right now where Trump is saying, I needed to go in there and use the military to obliterate their nuclear weapon systems. Well, if you didn't destroy the JCPOA to begin with, we wouldn't be in this problem. Again, it's making an issue and then saying that he's the savior to solve the issue that he made.
Yeah.
There was a lot of bluster, a lot of blame game, a lot of trigger words that are going to ignite, certain people to rally around the flag, and they're not going to be educated and deliberate and calculated in their thought process and understanding the bigger picture about, 50 years of history, right, that has occurred between us toppling the original government in Iran in 1979 and inserting, the Shah,
Yep.
and then building up to where we are now.
Yep.
We shouldn't be tunnel visioned. We need to understand the bigger picture, and really the bigger picture from the beginning and the initiation of NATO as well. And blaming our allies, saying they're not here to help us, is completely contrary to the whole purpose of what NATO was established for, which was a defensive alliance. Right. And it was only triggered, Article 5 was triggered once in its history, and that was because of September 11th. And then you go back and you look at Charlie Wilson's war, which gives a kind of dramatic, scenery about how we ended up in the September 11th dilemma that we did.
Yep.
So we've had the best of intentions. We've just haven't deliberately calculated the decision-making and the follow-on efforts to fulfill the promises in which we went in on to begin with. And that, the military is the greatest military in the world, but if you don't have a political end state, a political strategy.
Yeah, and there is no strategy here, clearly.
And that brings us to the end is, you're exactly right. I don't feel like there is a full military political strategy on how to end this thing. And we're just kind of pawning off these issues on our allies and saying, well, you rely on that oil. 20% of the oil of the world comes through that strait, and you rely on it. So now it's your problem. And automatically it will be, sooner or later, it will just be lifted. It will be fixed.
Well, this is Donald Trump.
Fixed.
Yeah. This is his theme, right? Is I don't take any responsibility at all.
Right.
That's what he was saying during COVID. And a lot of how he responded to COVID is very similar to how he's responding to this. It's magical thinking, just kind of thinking that this is all just going to sort of sort itself out and everything's going to be okay and everything's going to be fine. That's not how things work. Things end up being fine, if that is the outcome, is because people were prepared, or there are capable people in roles that can handle, crisis. That's not what's happening here. And he just wants to ignore it and stick his head in the sand and go la 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 while he looks at his poll numbers continuing to tank, totally underwater. I alone can fix it. No, he can't. He's causing more and more and more problems that, again, none of this needed to happen. None of this. Right. He walked into a country, he was inaugurated into, we were still in recovery from a global pandemic. And while, yes, things were bad, we were in much better shape than most countries around the world. I think it was Newsweek had a cover right before the election that said we had the economy that was the envy of the world. We were in pretty good shape. And excuse me, all things considered, and all he has done is tear it down and make us less safe, less prosperous, less stable. And people are going to die.
Right.
People are going to die because of war. People are going to die from poverty. People are going to die from pollution in their water, in their air, in the chemicals that they're putting back into our food, and to the lack of public health. And it almost seems deliberate at this point.
Our democracy's in peril.
Absolutely. Right? I would argue we don't have one anymore.
We're at a tipping point, and he's now deploying ICE agents into the airports as kind of a run through to see if he can use the ICE agents at the polling stations in November, because he recognizes that if people are going to vote, he is not going to win.
Yeah, he signed an executive order about this, that he's going to take over and federalize the elections. You can't just do that, right? Same with, you can't just undo the 14th Amendment. But, for the first time, we had a sitting United States president sitting before the Supreme Court today, listening to the oral arguments. He was bored out of his mind, but he was there to intimidate them because, again, he knows that if he loses control of anything, any lever of power, he's screwed.
Yes.
So he's going to do everything in his power to stop it. much like he did on January 6th and the weeks that led up to that, much like he was doing for the last 4 years, and whatever shenanigans he was able to pull off, which I sound like tinfoil hat right now, but like I'm starting to wonder how he pulled this off with the help of the tech overlords. And, you know, he ran for president to stay out of jail. And this again, and this is where, I know I want to wrap this up, but a lot of the language he used tonight was kind of just, just lean into it, just take it, just everything's going to be fine. Very much talking like a rapist, which is something that he has been held accountable for in the court of law, which, if you have read through the Epstein files, has been credibly accused by, if not hundreds of women, little girls, children. He is mentioned in those 3 million files in the unredacted files over 1 million times. There is one in which a young woman with the, it's not her real name, but Katie Johnson in the Epstein files, was a 13-year-old attending a party at Jeffrey Epstein's home in New York City. And he forced himself on her. She bit him. And she said that he punched her in the face. This is the man that we elected to be president again. Knowing the character of this human being, knowing the criminal history of not just him, but everyone around him, his family. And he has said it. Listen, he has said it just in a speech the other day. He's like, nobody really seems to care what I'm doing. No one seems to care anymore. I can just kind of do whatever I want. In fact, let me play this clip. This was today in the East Wing. I don't know which clip is. I have 2 clips, so hopefully this is the correct one.
They call me king now. Do you believe it?
It is.
No king. I'm such a king, I can't get a ballroom approved. It's pretty amazing, right? I'm a king. If I was a king, we'd be doing a lot more. I'm doing a lot, but I could be doing a lot more if I was a king.
If I was a king. Donald Trump's not that funny. He's not kidding.
He's telepathing everything from the beginning.
Everything.
Every accusation, admission,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
the rule of law is important, and the Constitution. Our founding fathers, we united for the revolution to overthrow a king who was waging wars and taxing us and not providing any social welfare benefits and letting all of the colonists take the brunt of the burden and just being used.
Yep.
The Fourth Amendment is there for a reason. The Fifth Amendment is there for a reason, because the redcoats would go in and rape and pillage the American colonists, and then basically hold a gun to their head and make them admit to things that they didn't even do. So the whole purpose behind the revolution and the Constitution is to ensure that we have a rule of law with a system of checks and balances in a republic that functions, that we don't have a runaway executive and we don't have a king. And here he is talking about he wants to be a king.
And this is what General Milley was saying. I don't take an oath to a king. I don't bow down to a king, to paraphrase what that famous speech is that he said when I believe it was when he was retiring. And listen, there's a reason these are no kings protests, is because he acts like a king. He wants to be a king. He is saying it out loud. And he's saying, I can do whatever I want now. No one really seems to care. No one's stopping me. So why would I stop? And he's not stopping. So, I think we have to watch in the coming weeks and months about, if he's going to declare some sort of emergency so that he can take over the elections or whatever else. He's going to try everything. And so, I bring it back to why we're here tonight was for the speech that he gave in the White House tonight, which didn't really seem to have much news in it. It was a bunch of gobbledygook, talking in circles. This war is not ending. At first, and by the way, they were like, this isn't a war. It's not a war because, you need Congress to actually declare war. So they were saying, no, it's not a war. But now it is a war, and they're calling it a war. But I mean, what's going on? So, I think we'll leave that for tonight, and we'll come back to this, obviously, because this is not anything that's going away. And I want to thank Jaclyn, retired Lieutenant Colonel Jaclyn Urso, for joining us tonight and adding all of her points of view and expertise from all of her years, decades in the military. We're so grateful to you, Jaclyn. And I apologize for the couple of times that I forgot to mute myself while I was coughing. I noticed after the fact, I was like, oh, that was loud. So I apologize. But I so appreciate everyone joining us tonight. I know that, we don't want to watch this man speak, but this is history. We have to bear witness, whether we like it or not, because if we don't know what we're up against, we can't fight against it. Jaclyn, any parting words before we go?
Thank you very much for having me on. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak through these issues. I hope you feel better. And it's important that the American citizenry is informed, right? Democracy works when we have an informed citizenry that takes part in our democracy. So as hard as it was to listen to what he said, it's important for us to understand and hear it and dissect it so we know what's happening, so we could take part in our democracy and fight for our freedoms, our rights, our responsibilities, the Constitution of the United States, and the rule of law. And he's going to be held accountable. Him and his cronies need to be held accountable through the rule of law when all of this ends. And there will be some type of Nuremberg trials.
Amen.
And the American public will hold him and his cronies accountable. That is necessary for the success of the United States of America, is to hold these guys accountable through the rule of law. And that's going to happen one way or another. And I want to be part of it.
Amen. And we're so glad you are, Jaclyn. And the last thing I'll say here is the podcast world and the kind of the landscape of these sorts of conversations are very often led by men from companies and podcasts and things that are either hosted or owned by men. And here at the Mayday Network, we are women owned and we are women led, and we put the voices of women out front because we are a part of this as much as anybody else. And we have every right to be here speaking our minds and holding space, taking up space in this world. So I always just like to remind myself of that. And for the people who tune in that, there's not a lot of us in this space, women. So we hope that you will continue to support us. And we're so grateful for those of you who do. And thank you to our moderators tonight as well. I didn't really see too many trolls up in there tonight, but I'm so grateful for all of you, regardless, for being here. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Mayday Network here on YouTube. You will be the first to know when we're going live and when we're doing things like this. And just some programming notes here. The next episode of The Americans, The Illegals, The Americans Rewatch podcast will drop tomorrow evening. I'm going to have it go live, I think, around 7 o'clock tomorrow so that we can tune in and have it be more of like an appointment kind of fun thing. And we can be in the chat and we can all chit chat with each other. Julie will be returning to the United States tomorrow evening. So hopefully she'll be back with us Friday morning to join Jeff Jarvis for Breaking the News. And she'll be back certainly, Saturday morning. For Saturdays with Sandy, we have Dana Dubois joining us, which will be a whole lots of fun. And in between all of that, watch out for Daily Dispatches. Maybe we'll have Jaclyn back to talk about things. And tomorrow night, Thursday at 9 o'clock, we will be doing a preview of the Final Four for March Madness with Joe Urso, who was Jaclyn's brother, who happens to be my husband, and our other friend, Chris. These, two guys who I'm on a group chat with who honestly know more about college sports than anybody I know. So join us tomorrow night for that. And for everybody else, get some rest. Go have a drink or not. Or maybe we'll have a cup of tea. relax, and we'll get up tomorrow and we'll do this all over again. Bye, everybody.
Fight on.
You got that right. Night, everybody.